everyone. In this recording, I'm going to show you how to set up and use a digital lab notebook. The one we're going to go through is called Lab Folder. And to get started, you can go to this website, labfolder.com. And this is where you'll set up your free account. So if you click the sign up button, you can type in all your information, agree to the terms, and so on, and go through that sign up process. Once you've done that, it might automatically take you to the start of your lab notebook. But I'll show you another way to get there just in case. So if you go to labfolder.com, you can go log in. And when you log in, it will take you directly to your lab folder. You can also get here anytime you need to by just putting this part of the URL into your browser, and it'll take you here. When you first come, it should show you this welcome to lab folder entry, and I do encourage you to go through and just see what some of the options are for how you can set things up and what flexibility there is. But I'm going to go through some of the ones that I found the most useful, and we'll go from there. Before we do that, I'm going to go to my profile, and you should all do this also. Check your time zone, and if it doesn't say New York, change that before you get started, because otherwise all the times will be in a different time zone. All right, so let's go back to the notebook. And at this point, we're going to do two things. We're going to set up a new project. Okay, so we'll manage projects. You can see this is the one that we were just in, the welcome folder. I've already been doing some practice in a separate folder or separate project. And what I'm going to do and have you do is make a new, so we'll add a project for this whole course. Okay, add a project. All right. We can open that up, and then within this project we can add entries to our notebook. And this is where, if you're doing a multi-week or throughout the course, you could do a separate entry for each lab day, for example. All right. So we've added an entry. Now we just have essentially a blank space to work with. We don't have a title yet, but it is doing some things for us. So it's saying who the author is. It's telling you when it was created and modified. It's actually also saving a history of everything you've done. So this is part of why this is permissible as a digital lab notebook. It's because when we do our notebooks on paper, we've always said, okay, you have to use pen, you can't have tear out pages because it needs to be a permanent record. Well, in this case, it lets you make changes, but there's a record of those changes. So you can always go back and see if any modifications were made and when. Okay. So by default, you'll start with just an empty text window like this. And a lot of what we'll do will be in these text windows. And what we'll start with is just trying to get our procedure into this space. Okay? So rather than having to write everything out or type everything out like you typically would, since it's all digital, we can copy and paste or import to save ourselves some time. I'll be honest with you, it's not perfect, but it's pretty good, and it definitely is faster than doing it out by hand. I gave you the attachment 3 notebook template in two formats, in PDF and in Word. PDF is better if you're just going to read it or print it, but the Word version is better for this purpose, for copying, pasting, or importing. So I'm going to Control A to select everything, and then I will copy and come over here and I will paste. There we go. All right, now it looks like it kept a lot of the formatting that we needed, and it did. What you're going to see though is if you save it, and then re-edit it, it actually loses a lot of that. I don't know why. But it still kept all the text and some of the formatting. Okay? So that's one option, is you can start with that and then go through and make any changes that you need to. I'm going to show you another way that I found to be a little bit better, which is using another one of these element types. So we were just using a text element, right? So if we hit this, we'll just get a separate text element where we could do more typing. We don't want that right now, right? What we're going to do is use this upload file. Right, so we're going to upload from the device, and I'm going to select the Word version. And there's a few things you can do once you have it here. Right now it's just a file that you could download again if you wanted to just know where it was. You could preview it and it'll pop up for you. Or you can extract it, and that's what we want to do. And if you scroll down, what that did is put all of it into a text box. It looks really similar to this. You know, there's some font differences, size differences, spacing differences, but all the text is the same. Okay? We don't need this anymore, so we can get rid of it. And I'm going to show you how to do the editing and formatting updates using this one, because it's a little bit cleaner to start with. But if you prefer, you could start with this one. It's really up to you. So I'm going to delete this one. Okay. And you can also change around the size of these boxes. So I'm going to make it a little wider for now for editing purposes, but we can always make it narrower afterwards if we want. All right, so let's edit. Okay. This heading right here, I'm going to actually make that the heading for this entire entry. Okay. So that's basically the experiment title. Right, so I cut that from here and I put it as the title. Now I'm just going to play around with the formatting. Oops. Sorry. I'm just going to play around with the formatting a little bit. So let's center this, make it, oops, wrong one, sorry. Let's bold this and center it. Let's give ourselves an extra space. We can underline this. And now you can see that there's actually no numbering. So the numbering that was in the original document is missing. And I do not suggest using their numbering feature here, because it doesn't work if you put anything in between that isn't numbered itself. So I'm just going to manually type in 1 here, oops, 2 here, 3 here, and we'll keep going and number them all the same as in the original. I'm actually running into a little bit of a tricky situation where the window is getting in the way, so I'm going to save this real quick and I'm going to make it longer. So let's do that. So you can actually make it long enough so that you can see the entire procedure without scrolling in the interior window. It's really up to you. You can always shrink it down once you've done any editing. All right, so that's the whole procedure. Let's do a little more. I was waiting for that extra scroll bar to go away. So now we know we're displaying the whole thing. And it should just make it a little easier to edit. So I'm going to go through and number all of them the way they were before. We're not going to do every single step here together, but I'll do enough to get you started. Now let's go back to the top. All right, this first entry, there's nothing we need to do there. The second one, it looks a little bit crowded, so what I'm going to do is add an extra space and maybe turn these into some bullet points. But you don't have to do that, that's really up to you. It's always good to also check if any special characters carried over. For example, depending on the arrows that are in there, they may or may not carry over, so you might have to copy and paste those manually. But in this case, they did copy just fine. Okay. So, all right, section 3, we'll just put some bullet points, make it look a little nicer. Same thing here. So you can see this is definitely saving a lot of time for most of the procedure, right? One thing is when we get to some of the like more figure looking things, it's not going to import as the same way we'd like. So here, if we go back to the original, you can see what it looked like. Right, see it all the arrows nicely lined up with the volumes. So for this, you could either just put the spacing back in, so we could like put some tabs in there to spread out the arrows. I apologize for the dogs making noise. Right, so you could keep doing that just to get it all looking nice. Everyone go out. Go out. Okay, and let's see if we can get these 10s lined up. Oh, we might need a little more room, so you could, you know, just keep playing around with that to get it looking the way you want. We might also want to just shift all of it to the right a little bit, indent it, put some bullet points here. Right, maybe we'll indent this a little more, make it look a little nicer. So you have a lot of the same editing and formatting capabilities that you'd have in any sort of word processing program. All right, so far all pretty simple, but when we get down here, you see there's a missing spot. So that was one of the formulas from the procedure, and unfortunately that doesn't import or copy well. So even if I tried to copy and paste that, it's not going to show up. So what I'm going to suggest is let's actually make this into a figure and we can put it in the notebook that way. So I just zoomed in a little bit so we'll get better resolution, and I'm going to do a screenshot. So I hit the print screen button on my keyboard. So I just took a picture of everything here. And I like to do stuff like this in a blank PowerPoint, but you could do it in a Word document or wherever you want. So we're going to paste as a picture and then crop it down. Okay. So now we just have that formula. And there are two ways we can put this into the notebook. One is copying and pasting it into a picture element. So we'll try that first. And the second is uploading it. And I'm going to show you both just because sometimes I've had better luck with one or the other, just the way it looks. So we'll see how that goes. All right. So the first option is here. The sketch element is for images. So we'll add a sketch element, automatically opens up this drawing pad, and I'm going to paste the figure using Control V on my keyboard. And for whatever reason, it doesn't show up when I do that at first, but I'm going to give it a name and save it, and then it should show up then. So let's see, we are doing the standard concentration calculations. So let's do formula for standard concentration calculations. And we'll save it. And let's see if the image popped up. It did not. Okay, I'm going to try again. Control V. All right, well, right now that's not working, which is part of why I found this other option. That involves saving the image and then uploading it. So I'm going to save as a picture. Okay. Save it as an equation. I'm going to do a JPEG. And now, just the way we uploaded the Word document, we can upload this. The equation. And there it is as a figure. Okay. We can now edit it, which means we can change the name. I'm trying to remember what I used as the name for standard concentration calculations. Okay. All right, so now it's there with that heading. I'm going to delete this one, but if it did work, it would look exactly the same as the one on the right. And you can change the size of the image by adjusting it like that. You can see I actually don't have the best resolution, so perhaps I should have made it bigger here before I saved it, and it would look a little bit cleaner. But it's certainly legible, right? Okay. Because we didn't put that directly in the procedure, right? It was supposed to be right here. So instead of formula below, oops, where'd it go? Let's say formula at right. And let's make this a little bit narrower. And let's make this a little bit narrower. Oh, a little bit more, apparently. There we go. So once it's narrow enough to fit side by side, they'll line up like that. So we can make it smaller this way too. That might be a little too small, but again, you can just kind of keep playing around with it until you get it looking the way you like. There we go. Okay. So that's how you can just insert images. And anytime you have something that's formatted really difficultly in Word, that's a good way. Or if there's just any other images you want to be able to reference while you're doing the experiment. So it could be pictures from our pre-lab video. It could be just you can actually even sketch things. So if you uploaded this and then it turns out you wanted to write something on it, you can use the pencil, right? And you can actually even write your values in there. Right? And then this aliquot size is changing throughout the experiment. So you're going to do 1, 2, 4, and so on. But you can save it and it would have that writing on it. Or if I change my mind, I can, let's see. So since I saved it, it's not going to let me undo, but I can clear all of the writing that I've done. So that could be useful. And we can save that. Okay. Let's see. See if there's anything else I wanted to do in here. So we made that look pretty good. You could, again, you could make it look a little better maybe. You don't need that label anymore. Okay, we've got our simplified equation. That carried over okay. These were supposed to be lined up over to the right a little bit, so let's go ahead and move those over. And maybe put in a few tabs. Okay, so at this point, I think you have an idea of what you should do to format it once you've either imported or pasted it so that you have a workable procedure. Now let's think about what we would do for our observations. One option is to go in and add them where we left some blanks here. But if we do that, let's change the color so that it's clear what was what was added after the fact. So if I want, I'll put just today's date and change the color. And my juice sample, let's say I did Welch's 100% juice cranberry cocktail, and I'll make that red. Okay, so just make sure you're making that distinction so we can see very clearly what was added after the fact. So any observations you make, right, your yes or no, your mass, your model, all of that, just change the color to make that distinction clear. That's one option. A second option would be to add a separate text element. And let's, if we make it a little narrower, it'll move up to the right. You know what, let's make it bigger again. Here, I'm gonna move it if I can. Oh, it's a little too wide. There we go. Nope, almost. There we go. Yeah, so now it's next to the procedure, and we could make this our observations. So we could just put them in a separate box. Now, to make sure it's clear where each one was, you would just use the same numbering. So for step 1, you would write Welch's Grape Cocktail, or sorry, 100% Juice Cranberry Cocktail. For step 2, you would write, no pellet. For step 3, you would say 52.1 milligrams, and so on. So just make sure your numbering here matches your numbering here, so that it's very clear what they correspond to. All right, so that's a second option. Right, so if you'd rather have your observations side by side rather than integrated, you can do that. A third option is they actually have this, where is it? Data element box. So let's make it a little smaller. I haven't honestly had the best luck with this. It just seemed a little clumsy to me, but you might like to play around with it and it might work well for you. So I want to just show you how it works a little bit. So if we go in here, there are different types of data that you can enter. So you can have a text entry, a numerical entry. Data groups are if you're going to do several entries of the same type. And then this one, I don't think we have. This one's much more complicated. You have to enter items separately, so we're not going to use that. But let's say we wanted to do for our vitamin C, for our juice sample, we could add a text element. Okay, and then save it. And so that's there as an entry. We can add our mass of vitamin C. There's a lot of options, so we're just going to say mass, but you could be more specific, less specific, depending on your preferences. You can put your units in there, so we're in milligrams. Okay. So we can put that there. Right? If you wanted to do a group, we could call this vitamin C standard preparation. And then, this entry was related to that, so we could just drag it down. Having a little trouble getting it to drag. Let me try this. Okay. Into that space below. All right, let me try switching it. Drag this up first. And now we want to put that in there. Okay, so let's see what that looks like. So now you could put all of your observations related to vitamin C standard preparation under here, and so they'd all be grouped together. You could put any volumes and so on. So yeah, that's an option. It you know, if you can, it is a little bit more clicking and moving things around than just typing in here or typing in here, but wanted to show you so you have options. And I could see scenarios if you're doing a lot of numerical entry, for example, it might be more convenient to do it this way. Okay, so we've talked about how to get the procedure in there. We've talked about how to do some observations. I'm going to show you a couple other things you might want to use. One is this table element. So if you insert a table element, you can actually, it's going to give you what's essentially an Excel file that you can edit through the website and then save. So it'll do calculations just like Excel would, so that could be really convenient. What I'm going to use it for is just to do a sample loading tray. So this is the tray that is going into the HPLC machine. It has, hopefully I'm gonna, oops, I believe it's 8 rows and 8 columns and 6 rows. Let's actually format these a little differently. Okay. Let's make our headings bold. And I'm going to highlight all the cells and show all the borders. So right now it looks like, why are we doing this? But let's save it. And you can see now I have my sample loading tray. We can make it a little bigger so you can see the whole thing. Okay. So this is just an empty tray, and once you're in lab and you know where you're putting your samples, you could go in and edit this. You could say, oh, okay, my samples are going here and here. Oops. And you could even type into them, this is juice. Right? And you could put all the entries and you'd see exactly where yours were. That's not something you absolutely have to do. You could just as easily do that by typing it in, just saying like in position A1, I put juice, so on. You could even draw it. So if you're using a touchscreen device, we can add just a blank sketch element, and you could say, let's see, no, that didn't work, hang on, I think we had to do that first. Yeah, so we could add a tray, and then we could write in there, so you could just sketch it out like this. This could be really useful depending on the device you're using. You can, again, undo and redo, but once you save it, you can't undo anymore, and it's actually pretty clunky to erase. So I'm using the erase button on my stylus, and it's not working. So you have to actually use the selection tool, select, and delete each individual line. So now that you know that, it's not too bad, but I just didn't want you to get stuck and, put a lot of writing on here that you then want to delete. You could always go ahead and just clear it and start from scratch. And that would work too. Let's actually undo that and save it. Right, so you could change the name, you can move it around. Right? And I think that's all I wanted to show you for what you put into the notebook. So everyone has their own preferences about like what they want to have available to them going in. So you could, in addition to these notes, you could go to the full procedure. So these were all just from attachment 3. The full procedure had additional details. So you could put some of those notes in here in a different color. So maybe put those in blue and then put your observations in red. So you'll just have whatever you need accessible to you. So play around with it a little bit, make it your own, and just make sure that everything that you need is there and that everything is organized and clear. But again, there's quite a bit of flexibility about how to actually arrange things and different ways of entering information. Once you're done, there are a couple of options for how to turn this in essentially. One is to set up a group. So we could manage groups, add a group, all right, and then if we manage projects, we can move this project into that group. Though that didn't work. Hold on. Maybe I need to do it this way. Nope. Whoops. Sorry, wrong click. Okay. Oh no, manage projects. Well, maybe we're not going to do it this way after all, since I can't figure out how to make that work. Well, that's something we can revisit later if we want, making groups and moving the project into that group. Let me try one more time, because it should just be dragging it like this. It doesn't seem to be working. Okay, so we can see if we can get that working. The simpler way is, let's go back to the notebook. And, so it took me to the sort of default notebook. I'm going to go to my one we were just looking at. Here we go. And if I click, if it's here, I can export as a PDF. Okay. When you do that, it'll give you a download link. You can download it and then you can submit it through Moodle the same way as you have with your other notebooks. It does change the formatting some, so it might move around these different elements. That's fine. Don't worry about it. We'll be able to find it. Just make it look the way you want as you're using it on the screen. But you can also start to see how this could be really useful if you were going to do the same experiment multiple times with, for example, different juices. You could duplicate this entry. So like this entire experiment, right? You could duplicate it, and if you're redoing it with a different juice, probably needs minimal changes to the procedure. So you wouldn't have to rewrite everything or retype everything. You could just carry it over, delete your observations, and go from there. But I'll show you the export. So, and you can do just this entry, which for me is the entire project, but you probably just want to do one entry at a time. Oh, actually, I didn't even see this. I'm going to try it. Preserve entry layout. So remember I said it could move the elements around, maybe it won't now. And let's see what happens. So it'll do a pop-up when it's ready, but you can also go to Manage Exports. All right, so this one, that is the one we were just working on. Okay, that worked great. So now everything's exactly where we put it. And it'll look the same when you hand it in as it did when you were working on it. So you can see it's pretty cool. You can get something that's very similar to the side-by-side procedure and observations like we've done before, or you can have it more integrated. And I hope you enjoy trying this out. It's something that we haven't used in the lab before, and I'm excited to see how it works for all of you.